October 1942, Buin Airfield, Bougainville. The afternoon sun glints off the corrugated iron hangars as a group of Imperial Japanese Navy aviators stand smoking and squinting toward the southern horizon. Among them is Lieutenant Saburo Shindo of the 251st Kokutai, a veteran Zero pilot whose logbook is thick with victories from China to Rabaul. He watches as a flight of slender American aircraft sweeps past at high altitude, silver shapes with twin booms and engines humming like distant hornets. One pilot laughs. 2 engines? The Americans are learning to fear stalling. Another shakes his head. Too heavy, too slow to climb. No turn capability. Easy prey. Below the Pacific heat haze, the new American fighter, Lockheed's P-38 Lightning, makes its first impression on Japan's airmen, and it is not a flattering one. The aircraft looks ungainly, unlike anything fielded by the Japanese Navy or Army. Its twin Allison V-1710 engines flank a central pod that holds the cockpit and guns, 4 50 caliber Brownings and a 20mm Hispano cannon, all mounted dead on the center line. To Japanese pilots accustomed to the elegant, low-weight, ultra-maneuverable A6M0, the Lightning appears overbuilt, overcomplicated, and, worst of all, underperforming where it mattered most, in a swirling dogfight of tight turns and split S-dives. When American P-38s first arrive in the skies over the Solomons that month, their primary mission is not to hunt. It is to escort. B-24, Liberators and B-17 flying fortresses of the USAAF need protection as they fly reconnaissance and strike missions over Japanese positions from Guadalcanal to Bougainville. The Lightning S range, over 100 miles with drop tanks, makes it the only Allied fighter in theater capable of staying with them. But range means fuel, fuel means weight, and weight means sluggish performance at low speeds. In those first encounters, Japanese pilots sense weakness. Hitoshi, break left, take the rear one, Lieutenant Shindo calls as the formation of P-38s turns wide above Rabaul. The Zeros peel off with graceful ease, their Mitsubishi Sakai engines snarling as they tighten the circle. The Lightning pilots, despite diving for speed, struggle to stay inside the turning radius. One P-38 is hit, small lines of vapor trailing, as rounds punch into a wing. Its pilot snaps the yoke and dives vertically, using gravity as his only escape. The Zeros follow, but quickly abandon the chase as the Lightning drops beyond safe recovery angles. The kill is unconfirmed, but the impression is solidified. In the ready rooms and barracks afterward, the mockery begins in earnest. Those Americans bring refrigerators into the sky, one pilot jokes, earning laughs. 2 engines for 2 chances to fail, another smirks. The Imperial Japanese Navy and Army Air Forces have spent years refining a specific doctrine: light aircraft, minimal armor, tight turning battles, high maneuverability. The A6M0, particularly the Model 21 variant dominating the Pacific in 1942, embodies this philosophy. Its armament is modest, but its agility seems almost supernatural against early Allied opponents. The P-38, built for speed, climb, and firepower, shares none of these traits. Reports circulate. P-38s cannot outturn. P-38s cannot climb at low altitude. P-38s cannot engage without diving first. Word spreads from Rabaul to Truk. To the Japanese, the new American fighter is a curiosity, not a threat, just another tool the US uses to compensate for fear of dogfighting. A Zero pilot's confidence is his weapon, and in late 1942, that confidence is unshakable. But war does not stand still. Across the Pacific, in noisy revetments carved from jungle, American ground crews wrench at engines and swap ammunition belts. Pilots sit through intelligence briefings, studying what little exists about Japanese tactics. Many of these men are young, some barely 20, but they fly machines that, for all their early shortcomings, possess untapped potential. Men like Major Richard Thafambong of the 49th Fighter Group, whose quiet demeanor hides a hunting instinct. Or Captain Thomas J. Lynch, who develops a taste for high-altitude ambushes. Or the newly arriving squadrons of the 39th and 80th Fighter Squadrons, bringing with them fresh tactics and newer Lightning variants. By January 1943, the front evolves. The battle for Guadalcanal ends. Japanese forces begin withdrawing from the island under the cover of night. Airfields across the Solomons shift hands. Logistics routes change. Suddenly, the war is no longer defined by tight-turning battles over short distances. It becomes a contest of endurance, coordination, and deep strike capability. And this, quietly, almost invisibly at first, is where the Lightning's strengths begin to matter. Twin engines mean reliability over vast ocean emptiness. Turbo superchargers mean power at high altitude where Japanese engines suffocate. Centralized guns mean lethal accuracy at long range. A radio set, superior to Japanese sets in both clarity and reliability, means coordinated tactics instead of individual duels. In briefing rooms from Port Moresby to Henderson Field, American commanders start shifting the narrative. "You don't fight them down there," a flight leader instructs, pointing to a low-altitude ring on the map. "You take them up here, and when they try to climb, you drop on them." The Japanese have mocked the Lightning for months, but the Lightning, as yet, has not truly spoken. That moment is coming, and when it arrives, it will reshape the skies of the Pacific. April 7th, 1943. 24,000 feet over the Huon Gulf, New Guinea. The thin air rattles against the canopy of Lieutenant Dick Bong SP-38F Lightning as he eases the throttles forward. The cockpit trembles, turbo superchargers whining behind him like distant saws. Below the twin booms, the endless green of New Guinea's jungle disappears into clouds. To his right, Captain Thomas J. Lynch signals with a quick waggle of wings. "Bandits, 2 o'clock low." Specks, dark, fast, cut across the cloud deck. Zeros from the 204th Sentai, climbing hard to intercept a flight of B-24s returning from a strike on Salamaua. Bong flips his radio switch. "Red flight, stay high. We wait for them to climb." These are no longer the old habits of 1942. No wide circles, no desperate dives for speed at the last second. This is patient hunting. This is altitude supremacy. This is a different Lightning than the one Japanese pilots first mocked. Below, Lieutenant Saburo Shindo banks his Zero as he spots the retreating liberators. They trail smoke and contrails, limping home. "We chase," he calls to his wingmen, coaxing every ounce from his Sakai engine as they claw higher, higher, higher. But the Zero is a creature of low and medium altitudes. Up here, its engine begins to suffocate, and its climb turns desperate. The airframe shudders from thin air, the pilot fighting both machine and altitude. Above him, Bong presses his advantage. All red elements, now. The P-38s roll, twin tails slicing clean arcs across the sky. They drop from the sun like silver hammers. At these heights, the Lightning is a different beast. Fast, stable, and armed with pinpoint firepower. Bong squeezes the trigger. The nose-mounted Browning spit white streaks into the Zero's left wing root. There's no deflection guesswork, no wing-mounted timing, just raw, concentrated destruction. The Zero blossoms into a brief fireball and tumbles into the cloud layer below. Captain Lynch picks another target, diving, firing, climbing again before a single Zero can turn inside him. The Japanese attempt to roll and chase, but the Zeros stall first. One breaks off entirely, engine coughing in the cold. In less than 30 seconds, the fight is over. For men like Shindo, it is the first time the Lightning reveals its true nature. Not a lumbering twin-engine escort, but a high-altitude predator designed for hit-and-run tactics, vertical fighting, and long-range endurance. The Japanese return to base shaken. "What were those?" one pilot asks in the ready tent at Leh. "Lightnings," a mechanic replies quietly. "The same slow planes from last month. It is the beginning of a new pattern." Lightning-equipped groups, 39th, 49th, and 80th Fighter Squadrons, begin escorting bombers deeper into Japanese territory in the Solomons and New Guinea. They learn to fight vertically, climbing above incoming enemy formations and dropping with decisive bursts, then zooming away before the Zeros can react. Kill-to-loss ratios shift. Missions grow bolder. Commanders take notice. By August 1943, Intelligence reports filtering through the Japanese Navy indicate rising losses to heavy twin-engine fighters. The reports do not match the mockery of 1942. Now they describe unexpected high-altitude performance, fast diving attacks, long-range, interference with bomber interception. But the true shock will not come from the skies above New Guinea or Guadalcanal. It will come from an operation planned in a sealed room, built on decrypted signals and executed with surgical precision. And it will stamp the P-38's name into history forever. April 17, 1943, Naval Base Noumea, New Caledonia. In a dimly lit room, U.S. Navy intelligence officers and Army Air Forces planners crowd around a map of Bougainville. A decoded ultra-intercept lies on the table. A message from the combined fleet staff outlining an inspection tour by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor. The intercept lists times, aircraft type, landing strips, departure points. The level of detail is astounding and lethal. Yamamoto will fly from Rabaul to Balali on April 18th, leaving at 06 Mard and arriving around 08 Dak. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas C. Lanphier of the 339th Fighter Squadron runs a finger along the map's scale. It's nearly 400 miles one way, beyond the range of most fighters. One voice in the corner answers, "Not for the P-38." The room falls quiet. The Lightning is the only Allied fighter with the legs for such a strike, especially with drop tanks. A plan forms. Simple on paper, impossible in execution. Navigate 400 miles at wave-top height to avoid radar. Arrive at the precise minute. Intercept 2 G4M Betty bombers and their escort. Escape before Rabaul can respond. The margin for error is razor thin. The result, if it works, will echo across the Pacific. At dawn on April 18th, the chosen pilots slide into their cockpits. Engines roar, turbo superchargers whir, and ground crews slap the Lightning's aluminum skin as the propellers churn the humid air. The mission ignites into motion. No headlines, no radio announcements, just the low growl of Allisons and the knowledge that history rides in their drop tanks. For Japanese pilots, the day begins in routine. Escorts launch. Yamamoto's bomber lifts from Rabaul, wings shimmering in the morning light. There is no hint at all, that men hundreds of miles away are skimming waves to meet them. But they are coming, and soon the Pacific will witness the Lightning's most infamous kill. April 18, 1943, over the Solomons, west of Bougainville. The sea looks deceptively calm beneath the scudding clouds as 16 P-38G Lightnings of the 339th Fighter Squadron skim just 30 feet above the waves. Their propellers chew the humid Pacific air, leaving faint trails of disturbed spray behind them. Flying this low is exhausting. Every wave crest threatens to drag a wingtip, but radar cannot see them here. Japanese reconnaissance cannot hear them here. They are ghosts moving through blue silence. At the head of the formation, Major John W. Mitchell checks his compass and adjusts for drift. The entire mission hinges on dead reckoning over nearly 400 miles of open ocean. There are no landmarks, no radio beacons, no second chances. If Mitchell's timing is off by even a few minutes, the ambush collapses, and the pilots will be left with just enough fuel to limp home, if they were lucky. Behind him, Lieutenant Rex Barber steadies his Lightning, eyes fixed on Mitchell's tailplane. Beside him flies Lieutenant Thomas Lanphier, jaw clenched, alternating glances between his fuel gauges and the frothing waves below. None of them speak. The radios are kept quiet to avoid detection and to preserve focus. Only the Allisons speak now. 2 hours crawl by. The sun climbs higher. Sweat beads beneath flight suits. Flying low offers safety from radar, but it means hot engines, high fuel burn, and constant stress. Men begin to check their waterproof watches, not because they doubt the mission, but because time is the blade edge upon which it rests. In the air hundreds of miles ahead, a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber tailcode T-1323 carries Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the man who engineered Pearl Harbor. The strategist behind Japan's early war successes and one of the most respected naval leaders in the world. His presence in the sky of Bougainville this morning is no random occurrence. Yamamoto is punctual to the point of rigidity. His staff often joke that if he says, "I will arrive at 08 CUD," one could set a watch by it. Today, that habit will cost him dearly. The Betty drones steadily toward Balale airfield, escorted by 6 A6M-0 fighters from the 204th Kokutai. The Zero pilots are relaxed. Intelligence has not warned them of incoming enemy fighters. Their mission is routine: protect the Admiral until touchdown. The Pacific sky is clear. The day seems uneventful. But below the clouds, unseen, unheard, Mitchell begins a gentle climb. At exactly 09:34 Bougainville time, he raises his hand and guns the throttles. One by one, the 16 Lightnings surge upward in a shallow arc, finally breaking the surface-hugging flight that has carried them this far. The aircraft burst through low cloud and fan out across the sky, engines howling as altitude unwinds beneath them. Lanfear scans the horizon and freezes. Tally. Bombers! 2 silhouettes glint in the morning light, long thin wings and round noses unmistakable even at distance. The Betty bombers cruise northward, climbing gradually with their escort close behind. In Japanese cockpits, heads snap toward the sudden movement. Zero pilots blink in shock at the vision of twin-engined fighters bearing down on them from the west. They had been taught to view the Lightning as a clumsy, perhaps even foolish aircraft. Yet here it is, descending with perfect timing and overwhelming speed. Mitchell snaps the radio alive with a single command. Go! Lanfear and Barber peel away, engines screaming as they dive directly toward the lead Betty. The remaining Lightnings surge ahead to intercept the escorts, buying precious seconds for the kill. Inside Yamamoto's bomber, a staff officer notices the glints and shouts a warning. The pilot shoves the throttles forward, but the Betty is no match for the Lightning's velocity. The bomber wallows, nose dipping slightly, as its escort tries to cut across the attacker's path. Barber lines up his shot. His nose guns spit flame. 50 caliber rounds punch through the Betty's port engine and cockpit glazing. Smoke trails immediately. The bomber tries to bank away, but its wounded engine belches flames. Seconds later, a burst from either Barber or Lanfear shreds the wing root. The G4M rolls inverted and plunges toward the jungle canopy below. The crash is not graceful. The Betty disintegrates among palms and vines, scattering debris, igniting foliage, and ending the life of the man whose mind had once reshaped naval warfare. Yamamoto is dead. The second Betty, carrying Vice Admiral Ugaki, tries to escape at low altitude. Barber gives chase, riddling the fuselage until smoke pours from the engine. Ugaki survives after crash landing, but the mission is decided. The Pacific has just absorbed one of its most decisive blows, not through ships or fleets, but through the wings of the Lightning. The dogfight overhead is brief but furious. The Zeros, caught out of position, try to claw for altitude, but the P-38s slash through their formation with hit-and-run strikes. They do not try to outturn the Japanese. They climb away, regroup, dive again. This is vertical warfare, not the horizontal ballet that once defined aerial combat in the Pacific. Within minutes, Mitchell signals withdrawal. Fuel reserves are threadbare. They drop to wave-top height once more, disappearing as suddenly as they came. Hours later, back at Henderson Field, exhausted pilots shut down their engines. Ground crews swarm over steaming Allisons, and intelligence officers pace the flight line demanding confirmation. Barber steps down from his Lightning, face smeared with oil and sweat. "He went down," he says simply. "We saw him hit." Word spreads quietly through the squadron. There are no cheers, not yet. The gravity of what they have done is too large to express in shouts.
Only after radio intercepts from Rabaul confirm Japan's state of shock does the reality sink in. Across the ocean in Japan, the effects are immediate and chilling. Newspapers speak of tragic loss and heroic duty, but among pilots and naval officers, there is a darker realization. If the Americans can strike Yamamoto in mid-flight, then no one is beyond reach.
And to Japanese aviators who once laughed at the lightning, a sobering truth takes root. This plane hunts. September 1943, Kahili Airfield, Bougainville. The metal of the grounded Zero fighters is hot enough to burn through gloves as mechanics fuel and arm them under a merciless tropical sun. The 204th Kokutai has suffered a string of losses in recent weeks, losses that cannot be explained away by inexperience or bad weather. A rumor moves quietly among the pilots, traded in hushed tones over rice bowls and cigarettes. It's the twin-tailed ones. They come from nowhere. Lieutenant Saburo Shindo listens without speaking, but his eyes betray the truth. He has seen these attacks firsthand. Gone are the days when American fighters bumbled into combat eager to turn with the Zeros. The P-38s no longer tumble into desperate spirals or vanish into cloud banks. They come with altitude. They come with coordination. They come to kill, and then they leave before the fight can even settle. Far to the southeast, at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, the tempo of air war has changed completely. The United States is no longer fighting simply to hold ground. It is pushing north, island by island, airstrip by airstrip. The lightning is at the center of that advance. In briefing tents lit by buzzing lamps, pilots gather around grease pencil maps. A captain taps the Solomon chain with a pointer. Vela la Vela, Colombangara, Kahili, Bougainville. Long-range sweep. 2 hours to target. We hit them before they launch bombers. This is a reversal of 1942. The Japanese, once the hunters sweeping south from Rabaul, are now the hunted in their own airspace. The P-38's range allows deep incursions that no Allied fighter could attempt a year earlier. Lightning squadrons slip into the skies before dawn, engines thundering through mist, drop tanks clamped tight under their wings. They climb to altitude, spread out into wide fighting elements, and wait. By mid-morning, Japanese bombers or reconnaissance flights attempt to rise from Bougainville or Kavieng and find American fighters already there, coiled and ready. The Japanese pilots who once ridiculed the Lightning now face an enemy they can rarely catch, and even more rarely outmaneuver. The P-38's turbo superchargers make it unchallenged above 20,000 feet. Its armament, centered and concentrated, tears through fragile bomber formations with sickening efficiency, and its pilots grow deadly. Major Richard Ira Bong of the 49th Fighter Group begins stacking victories. 1-0 here, 2 Bettys there, until his name becomes legend. Major Thomas Lynch develops a chilling reputation for intercepting lone reconnaissance aircraft hundreds of miles from friendly bases. Charles McDonald, Gerald Johnson, J.T. Robbins, each develops a personal style of lightning combat that would have been unthinkable the year before. The Japanese intelligence summaries grow grim. Enemy twin-engine fighters possess excellent high-altitude performance. Escort fighters increasingly interfere with bomber interception routes. Enemy fighters attack bombers at range previously considered impossible. For the Japanese, it is not only the dogfights that sting, it is the attritional math. The Lightning can haul its pilots home on a single engine. The Zero cannot. The Lightning can dive away from bad engagements. The Zero cannot follow. The Lightning has radio coordination that enables team tactics. The Zero flies in loose pairs and threes, relying on individual skill. Every engagement becomes a trade, and the trades favor the Americans. By late 1943, the psychological shift is unmistakable. At Rabaul, once the fortress of Japanese air power, pilots begin refusing aggressive pursuit beyond the protective ring of fleet anti-aircraft guns. The Lightning's reach into the northern Solomon Sea makes long bomber missions hazardous before they begin. February 1944, Hollandia, New Guinea. The monsoon clouds stack high over the jungle mountains as the U.S. 5th Air Force launches its most ambitious lightning operations to date. Escort missions now stretch more than 600 miles, through tropical storms, over mountain ridges, across yawning ocean gaps. B-24 Liberators arc northward toward Wewak, Tadji, Hansa Bay, with lightnings glued to their flanks. It is here, in the jagged spine of New Guinea, that the Lightning becomes indispensable. Japanese Army fighters, Ki-43 Oscars and Ki-61 Tonys, rise to challenge them, but the outcome resembles a ritual more than a contest. The Oscars attempt to turn, too slow, too low. The Tonys attempt to dive, too late to escape. The Lightning pilots attack in tight, disciplined pairs, one diving, one covering, then climb back into cold, thin air. In a single week around Wewak, the U.S. 5th Air Force shatters the Japanese Army Air Forces over northern New Guinea. Dozens of aircraft burn on the ground. Dozens more fall from the sky. The Lightning does not merely win dogfights, it shapes campaigns. Back at Bougainville that same spring, Lieutenant Shindo sits on an oil drum outside the operations shack, staring at the cloud tops. A replacement. Zero lands shakily, its pilot shaken and pale. He reports seeing silver fighters above the forming cumulus, waiting, not attacking, just watching. Shindo understands the implication. These Americans are not rushing into battle. They are choosing the battlefield and the moment. He lights a cigarette, exhales slowly, and says quietly to no one, "Those twin tails, they are hunters." The laughter from 1942 is gone, replaced now by caution, then by respect, and finally by fear. Because somewhere above the Solomons, beyond the cloud deck where the Sakai engine begins to gasp, the Lightning is circling, always watching.